Hello once again to my kitchen here at Trails N62. I'm going to be making another series of meals in a jar. Basically what I do is I get the ingredients for so many of them, and I get the ingredients prepped up and ready to go, put in the refrigerator, and then I start making each meal as I go. Now I don't have all my ingredients for everything that I want to do yet, but I've got some to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to be sweet and sour pork. Now there's also sweet and sour chicken. And I'm going to be doing some chicken also, but the sweet and sour chicken, sweet and sour pork, the recipe I have is for sweet and sour chicken, but I'm going to be substituting some pork. I just happen to have some old pork in my freezer that's been there for a while and probably won't be very good, frying up in a pan or anything. So I cut it up into cubes, and I'm going to can it into my sweet and sour pork. And then I've got some chicken that I'm going to use because the recipe for the sauce is for 10 pints or 5 quarts or 7 pint-and-a-half jars. I'm going to be using pint jars. So I'm going to make the full batch of the sweet and sour sauce up. And that's going to be for, like I said, 10 pints, 5 quarts, or 7 pint-and-a-halves. So we're going to start there and make up our sauce for the sweet and sour sauce. I've got everything prepped and ready to go as far as the other ingredients are concerned. And first we're going to make the sauce. I start out in my pot, and this is for the full recipe, making 10 pints, 5 quarts, or 7 pint-and-a-halves. I start off with 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and remember, brown sugar measurement is packed in the cup. So that's 3/4 cups of brown sugar, and that's followed by 1 1/4 cups of white vinegar, 1 1/4 cups of white vinegar. After that, we put in 6 tablespoons of soy sauce. Followed by 4 tablespoons of ketchup. And 1 tablespoon of ginger, powdered ginger. Next, we're going to add 3 cups of pineapple juice. Now, the full recipe calls for 3 20-ounce cans of pineapple. And it suggests that you get the pineapple that doesn't have extra sugar added. So, the pineapples I have, there's nothing in it but pineapples, pineapple juice, and citric acid. That's all it says is in it. Almost made 3 cups for the 3 cans, and then you add water in it to make the 3 cups if you're a little short. So 3 cups of pineapple juice, additional water if you need it to make up the 3 cups. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this, heat this up, bring it to a light boil until the sugar is dissolved. We'll heat this up to a light boil and we get all the sugar dissolved. And that'll be our sauce. And next we're going to, when we get this up here heated up, we're going to layer our other ingredients into the jars, and then we'll pour this hot liquid on top of it. And then we'll be able to can it. Okay, we're just about to get to a boil here. I see it's starting to move a little bit, and so this is going to bring it up to a light boil. We don't want to overcook it because it's going to cook more once it's in the canner. So we're bringing this up to a light boil. It'll be hot when we put it in. And we want to make sure everything is dissolved and stirred up in there good. And there we are. Alright, looks like everything's turned up good. I'm going to turn the heat off. Now we're ready to pack our jars. Alright, now I'm doing something here that I don't normally do with my meat, and that's I'm par cooking it. And I'm doing this primarily because, well, it'll render out some more of the fat. I trimmed off most of the fat. These are some old pork loins and pork chops. They were vacuum sealed in the freezer. I think they were dated 2017. So they won't have as much moisture, but they were vacuum sealed. But I want to par cook these because of texture. You get a different texture. It's a little more firmer when they're par cooked a little bit. Normally I only par cook my hamburger, and again, that's two reasons for that: because of texture and because I feel, and this is just me, I know there are other people who do differently, but personally I think that raw hamburger is going to be too dense in the pressure canner to can properly. Now I do dry can my hamburger because I like the taste of it better than when it's pressure canned in liquid. Some people don't know the difference, can't tell the difference, or don't care about the difference, or even like it better when it's cooked in liquid. But that's okay. You do whatever's good for you, whatever you feel best doing, whatever you like doing, according to the rules. And sometimes we just make the rules up. Anyway, I'm going to par cook these because this is going in this sweet and sour pork. And in sweet and sour pork, the pork doesn't need to be so shreddy, if that's a word. But this will help it hold together better. And again, it will take some of the moisture out of it, so it doesn't create more moisture. Raw meat will create more moisture than par cooked or cooked meat. So, but the primary reason I'm doing this is because the texture. I want these chunks to stay chunks as much as possible. So I'm just kind of par cooking this. The other thing that helps, this has been in the refrigerator, so it will also help warm the meat up. I'm going to be putting them in hot jars, and my sauce will be hot. My canner will be hot, so I need to make sure that my jars are not cold, or otherwise they'll break when you put them in hot water. So this will kind of help because the pineapple's cold and some of the other stuff is cold. So, but this will help warm it up. The jars will be warm. And so I'm just going to par cook this, just get it a little cooked on the outside. That'll give it a little texture when I'm ready to cook. Oops. About run my sink over. I've got my jars in hot water in the sink. That's the way I heat my jars up, just because it's convenient for me. My jars are washed in the dishwasher, and they're kept sealed in a container or turned upside down on a dish towel on the counter before I get them sealed in a container. So the pressure canning process will sterilize. If you're water bathing, of course you need to sterilize your jars, but I don't water bath, so. Alright, these are about done, and I'm pretty sure they're hot through and through. I'm getting the outsides, just a little bit of cooking on. I did put put about a tablespoon of olive oil in here before I started this, and that won't affect much of anything. I have about 3.5 pounds of meat here, I believe. I don't concern myself too much on recipes with the poundage of meat that I use unless I'm mixing everything together. This is going to be layered, so it's just a matter of the amount of meat that I put into each jar. The amount of ingredients that I put in each jar as far as that goes. Alright, I believe that's ready to go. My sauce is hot, my jars are hot, and my water's getting ready to boil for my lids. I still put my lids, I boil the water, put my lids in boiling water. Well, I don't put them in boiling water. I boil the water and then shut it off and put my lids in it so they warm up. Even though the ball says you don't have to anymore, I still do it. It doesn't hurt them, softens it up a little bit, and I also use some off-brand lids that I got on Amazon, so just to be safe with those, I'm not sure those are non-boiling. Now, I'm going to start out with 1/3 of a cup of meat. I always put my meat in when I layer these, the meat in the bottom. So I'm going to start out with 1/3 of a cup, and I'm kind of using a scoop cup here. I actually forgot I had these when I've done my other ones, but so it kind of gets 1/3 of a cup. And I'm starting out just 1/3 of a cup in each one because, to be honest with you, I don't know on the meat exactly how much that I have. I'm guessing 2/3 cup per pint. That's what my recipe calls for. At least that's how I extrapolated it out. 2/3 cup per pint of meat. So when you're dealing with chunky stuff, it's not very precise. So I like to try to get, you know, pretty even. So I can see that some of these have got more than others in. So we're going to take some out. Now my onion and peppers are in fact chopped, not diced. As you can see, this takes, the recipe actually calls for 2 large bell peppers, green bell peppers, and 1 large red one. Well, I bought a packet that had 4 peppers in it, 2 green, 1 red, and 1 yellow, so I just chopped them up. It's a rough chop. It's not diced. It's a rough chop. I did my onions the same way. Normally I dice my onions. In this case, I rough chopped my onions. Okay, so this recipe actually calls for mixing your peppers and onions together. And I'm going to put in 1/3 a cup of the mixed pepper and onion scoop. Now you can always adjust the amount of what you put in there based on what you like. So next we're going to put in 1/3 of a cup of our chunky pineapple. Again, this is just not exact. Like I said, I kind of regulated this down because the original recipe did this in 1.5 pints. So I'm just regulating it down from 1.5 pints. So remember, you can always add a little more if you want. These quantities I put in here are designed so that I get a kind of a uniform ingredient consistency. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 1/4 of a cup of water chestnuts. Alright, once I have 1/4 of a cup of water chestnuts, I'm going to kind of shake these down a little bit because you want to leave a 1-inch head space. And now we're going to fill these up with our hot liquid. debubble. Okay, I've got my sweet and sour sauce good and hot. So now I'm going to pour it in. Try not to dribble it all over everything. Up to the 1-inch mark, which is the bottom of the rim right here. As a matter of fact, with my funnel that I have in a regular size mouth jar, the funnel bottom actually goes down 1 inch, so I can just fill it up to the funnel bottom. Now I might just make a note. You see I filled up 5 pints. And I may need to put a little dab more. This is all that I have left. The recipe, I put in everything the recipe called for 10 pints. So as you can see, a lot of times when you're doing the liquid sauce for a recipe, for some reason it doesn't always work out that way. So you need to make sure that you have more than enough sauce for your recipe, because you don't want to run out of sauce in the middle of filling up a jar. Alright, going to debubble these. Now I do have some leftover stuff, and I actually planned on, the reason I made the full amount of sauce is I planned on doing some sweet and sour chicken, because I've got some chicken to make another recipe that's going to have a little extra there. So, but I'm going to have to make up some more sauce to do that. So we vinegar wipe, and I did taste this sauce, and it tasted good. It didn't taste like it would be too strong or anything, so we'll see when I eat one of these. I may have to water it down a little bit. Anyway, we vinegar wipe these because, again, anytime you're canning meat or beans or anything that might have some oil in it of any kind, then you need to vinegar wipe it, because that cuts through the oil and gets it off. Then we're going to put the rest of our vinegar in our pot, our canner, because we have extremely hard water. And we're ready for our lids and rings, and pop them in the canner. Now again, these are pints. So pints are going to be 75 minutes. If you do pint and a halves or quarts, they will be 90 minutes because of the meat in them. Now I always can according to whatever ingredient requires the longest amount of time. And I do that no matter what I'm making. I know there are some people who can soups a little differently, even if they have meat in them. You do what's comfortable for you. For me, if it has meat, I don't care what it is, whether it's soup or something like this or anything else, it's going to go for whatever the meat time is. Or if it has beans in it, same thing. That's just my philosophy. You do what you feel comfortable with at your kitchen. You are your own quality control. Be safe. Again, snug it down and then just finger tight. Okay, they're in the canner. I got 5 pints in there of sweet and sour pork. And again, always check your canner, whether you're using an electric canner or a stovetop canner. Always check your vent hole. Make sure it's clean and clear. Make sure your rim is good, your seal is good on there and everything, no obstructions on anything. Then we'll close it down, lock it, make sure you have your weight, proper weight on there. In this case, the green one for the Nesco is 15 pounds, and I'm over 1,000 feet above sea level, just barely, but still over 1,000 feet. So I use the 15 pounds. Make sure it's on exhaust to start with. And I program it in on high. And my time, again, 75 minutes. We've got them in the pot, 5 pints of sweet and sour pork. And we'll let the processor run its process. It will heat up. It will vent for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes of venting, it will beep. And then I will close down the vent to airtight. Then it will build up the pressure to 15 pounds and process it for 75 minutes. We'll be back when it's done. And there we are, 5 pints of sweet and sour pork. Done and done. They all seem to be sealing, so it's going to be pretty good. And there you have it, sweet and sour pork. Got 5 pints done, and I'll probably do some sweet and sour chicken. Basically, it's done the same way, just instead of using pork, you use chicken. So I'm going to probably be making some sweet and sour chicken too later on. We've got our 5 pints of sweet and sour pork. Now, like I said, you can do the same thing with chicken. And I'm going to do some chicken, sweet and sour chicken. But probably won't make a video of it because the process is the same. You just substitute chicken for the pork. To eat it, of course, like you would any sweet and sour chicken or pork, you can put some vegetables with it. You can, or just eat it by itself. I prefer mine just by itself with rice. I'm kind of a basic kind of guy. I don't need a lot of different things when I eat. Probably be more healthier for me, but so I use my dehydrated rice. And I do have a video on that, how to dehydrate rice. It's really real simple. And I like it because it's quicker, it's easier. And sometimes when you make stuff like this, it may be a little thin because you don't add thickeners before you can it, because they'll hinder the canning process. Don't ask me how. I could go into a long explanation, but just suffice it to say that generally speaking, you don't add thickeners before you can. But you can add thickeners after, when you go to eat it. And you can do that with this. If the sauce is too thin for you, add a thickener. Use some cornstarch and water, a little cornstarch, a little water mixed together, and then put it in when it comes to a boil. Flour will do the same thing. Flour and water, and put it in when it comes to a boil. That will work. I use rice as my thickener. My dehydrated rice, I can just take it, and it's equally proportional. If I put in a half a cup of rice, that will absorb a half a cup of liquid. So I can put a little rice in it and make it as thick as I want, and if I want more rice, I just make some more rice and pour it on top of it. So that's the way you eat your sweet and sour pork or sweet and sour chicken. Now, I do realize that most of you out there probably have more culinary sophistication than I do. I like to eat one-pot meals. I'm not a big, does it have color, does it have texture? I don't texturize my food when I eat it. But I understand people do. I see it on all the cooking shows. They like to see the color. They like to see the different textures and everything. I'm all about smell and taste. But I do realize that most people out there, you have to deal with other people that you're cooking for, especially children, and they are visually attracted to food or not, as well as textures. So I might suggest that if you're making this for more than yourself, or even if you're making it for yourself and you want a little bit more to it, you do have the flavors of the onions and the peppers when you pressure can this together, but you don't have the texture of them. You don't have the color of them. You might, if you have some red peppers in there, you might see some red in there. The green kind of fades away with the sauce and everything, but the taste is there. You can taste the peppers, you can taste the onions. So my suggestion is, in addition to adding vegetables, steamed vegetables, stir-fried vegetables to this, like you normally would something like this, sweet and sour pork, sweet and sour chicken, is that maybe you might want to stir fry some peppers and onions on the side, maybe, you know, something like that. Just stir fry some on the side so you still have that color and that texture. There's still a little crunchy, and add that to it, and that will make it for a better meal for everybody. So I just, you know, I just want you to understand, I do these for me, and I'm just, you know, if it's a one pot, put it in the plate and eat it, I'm good with it. But not everybody's that way, and I understand that. So think about that. Simply adding a few peppers and onions stir-fried with your pressure can sweet and sour pork, sweet and sour chicken, and it will make it a lot better for a meal. All right, that was free, didn't cost you anything. And that's it for now. Appreciate you watching. From my house to yours, from my kitchen to your kitchen. God bless.